Town, every once in a while, we like to take an opportunity just to hear what the Lord has done and some of the things that He's done in us and through us. One of the beautiful things that the psalmist, you'll hear the words of the psalmist every once in a while as you're reading through the Psalms is, come and listen, come and see what the Lord has done for me. And so this morning, we wanted to take some time to hear from Rachel Gendron, who just recently had an opportunity to go back to Italy for the fifth time, which is wonderful, and to work alongside some of our missionaries, George and Kim Aguirre. So, Rachel, tell us about your trip. How was that? And what happened?
Yeah, so back in June, I spent 2.5 weeks with the Aguirres in Italy. If you know Jordan Aguirre or Allison, that's their parents. And like Tim said, it's the fifth time God has made it possible for me to spend time with them. So on one hand, I felt like I knew what I was getting into, and on the other hand, I knew not to hold too tightly to any expectation. The primary reason I was going there was to help them with a kids camp that they put on in the parks there locally. So they do this twice a summer. They spend a week there, and then every Friday they go out and just hang out with these kids in the park. So the first week I was there was spent primarily preparing things, preparing crafts, preparing for science experiments, which is a new element that they've added to their time in the park, which my teacher's heart loved. I loved crafting experiments where the kids would see a truth through the experiment that we were doing, and then we would sit on the mat and we'd talk about the Bible with them, and they would hear that truth again. And our prayer was that as they went home or as they shared it with their friends and they're telling them about this fun science experiment, that their hearts would be reminded of the biblical truth that they heard, and maybe they'd even be sharing it again with their friends or with their families. So we spent a week preparing, and then we were out in the park for a week, and it was hot, but that does not stop the kids from coming out. We had almost 20 kids one day just coming. It's not like RVBS's people RSVP for or anything. They just go to the park, and we pray that God would bring kids and trust that whoever comes that's God. And so we had kids come. We were playing with them. We did crafts with them. Most importantly, we were able to clearly share the gospel with them day after day. And it was just so exciting to see these kids so clearly engage with what Kim was teaching. I don't speak Italian, but I could tell, their eyes are locked on her, and they're asking good questions, and they want to know. So that was really exciting. In addition to that, it was sweet to spend time just fellowshipping with the Aguirres and other believers that I've had the opportunity to get to know over the past 5 years, to share with them about what God's been doing here in our church, and to hear about what God's been doing there. They also do an English night in a local coffee bar where they open it up to the community in hopes that as community members come in to learn English, there would be relationships built that open opportunities to share the gospel. So yeah, it was a really good time. Spent some time then just fellowshipping, exploring Italy, and then was back home.
Okay, cool. So Rachel, what are some ways that we can be praying for you? What ways that we could be praying for the Aguirres specifically, even right now?
Sure. The Aguirres are finishing their summer ministry, so just pray for continued stamina. There's a lot going on. They're very busy hosting Bible studies, running their church services, they still go out in the park on Fridays. So they keep busy, so pray for them for energy. One of the boys, one of the days we were in the park, asked Kim concerning salvation, so this is kind of a decision we have to make now. And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. This is not something to delay on. This is a truth that, our prayer is that they would grasp and that they would choose to submit their lives to. So pray for those kids that as they hear truth, it would not just be cool Bible stories, but that they would understand it, they would see truth for what it is, they would understand their sin for what it is, and that they would confess their sin. Pray also that getting to know these kids would open doors into getting to know families. George has had the opportunity to talk with some of the fathers as they come by to pick up their kids, but just pray that God would open doors into just different community members so that they would have more avenues to share the gospel. And pray that they would just continue to be in sync with how God's growing and changing their ministry. When I first went 5 years ago, our kids club looked very different than it did this year. And it's amazing that the Aguirres don't hold on to any one of their plans so tightly as to just foolishly miss an opportunity to change for God's glory. So pray that they would be aware of the needs of their community and that they would respond in a God-honoring way.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Can you just thank the Lord with us for what He's done through Rachel? Thanks so much. And this is what I love about Rachel and her heart is that this is on her own initiative. This is not something that we've commissioned or something that we've sent. She's just said, I love Italy. I love the Aguirres. I love the children's ministry there. And I'm gonna dig in. I'm gonna do this. I want to invest on my own. And so I appreciate that about you, Rachel, and your heart to continue the work of Christ's mission, even at your own and sacrificial expense. It reminds me a few years ago when I was in student ministry and had the opportunity and the privilege to lead a student ministry missions trip, summer missions trip. One of our young men said, man, this being steeped in focus on the mission of God in the world is so good for my heart. It gives me focus every morning when I wake up. It gives me purpose for even the way I pray. And it helps me remember who I am in the bigger scheme of things. He said, I wish every day could be like this. And one of the other kids turned to him and said, it can. Like, why in our hearts do we tend to say, well, that is for a time, a season, or a trip? But what God has called us to as Christ followers is to enter into this mission work of His. And we get to do it in specific and concentrated times like that. But what I love about Rachel and others here in the congregation is that you get this and you do this all the time. And so, Rachel, even just this morning, they were having a meeting and strategizing with others about how can we live out the kingdom, how can we live out this mission right here and right now in Bucks County all the time.